to order. We're going to first start with a public hearing to accept a donation from the Friends of Hanover Norwich Schools. Someone would like to, is there a discussion here? Does anyone need to explain what this is? Okay. So would someone like to move to accept? Lily?
I move to accept with sincere gratitude the donation from the Friends of Hanover Norwich Schools.
Second. Any discussion? Great. Going around, is Kelly back on?
You have no board members on team.
Okay, so all in favor of accepting? Raise your hand. Unanimous. And I want to thank the Hanover Norwich Schools for that wonderful donation.
Can you move Kelly McConnell over to 14?
So at this point, we're going to close the public hearing and move to agenda review. Does anyone have anything to add to tonight's agenda?
You do have public-
What's that?
You do have public members on.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to offer the public an opportunity to address the board. We'll have 3 minutes to comment on items on the agenda. The board respectfully asks members of the public to state their name and address before commenting on agenda topics. Not seeing anyone, no one here in the audience either. Moving on. Reports. Report of the Hanover High School Council. Oh, hey. We get a new one every school.
So as you can tell, Kate couldn't make it tonight. I'm Josh Stearns, for those who don't know me. So I have several things to report on. The first being the mascot update. Last Thursday, we held an election, an in-person election to narrow down designs to a top 10. And today, it's very exciting. The final election for our official logo opened, and this will close next Friday. This logo will be then adapted by Miss Waters, who's an art teacher at Hanover. And the winning logo will be announced the week after next Wednesday. So 3 Wednesdays from today, I believe.
So those 10 logos are the ones up on the bulletin board out there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. I couldn't print out a little thing, but you can go see them outside after. Committees of council have been looking at their bylaws this year and making changes as they see fit. Council's administrative committee this year has proposed a motion which council will be talking about tomorrow, which will establish a student committee to examine equity at Hanover High. And they'll also plan MLK Day, which the admin committee has previously done, but the admin committee didn't feel that it was really right in the admin committee. And this new committee would also be able to plan other events which examine equity at HHS. Also recently, council passed Kavi Patel's microgrant bylaw revision. So this allows students to get access to microgrants. Previously, students could get grants through other paths, such as like independent study and youth in action. But people felt that it would be nice to add another way for students to get money for community service projects, for example. Also, the course standardization policy, which council recently passed, that requires teachers of the same class section or of different class sections to standardize policy. So, for example, different Alg 2H teachers would have to meet at the beginning of the year and create standardized policies. This would standardize things like grade weighting, retake policies, and lateness policies, among others. Ms. Stevenson did veto this, and council will be discussing this this coming week. And also, council elections are this Friday, so this means there will be a change in leadership coming up. So I'm not sure how many more meetings Kate will attend, but probably just one more, because I believe leadership will change in about 3 weeks for council. So council is winding down for the year, and we're making plans for a 50th anniversary celebration where we will have hopefully a keynote speaker. So we're excited for that. I would be happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Josh? Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, don't feel like you need to sit here. We're gonna be here for a while tonight. If you've got homework
Oh,
or,
no, I did most of it already, so.
okay,
Wow.
can I adopt you? Okay, moving on to RMS Principals Report. Tim?
All right. Happy fourth quarter. We've had a pretty eventful month since the last board meeting. I'm just going to try to highlight these. I did put most of them in board docs. All of what we had, one of the things that's been nice is that we've been able to open up our auditorium again. So we had 3 different concerts that we did, including, as I put in there, sort of one of the most jazz band things I've ever seen. We had our director, Mr. Hall, got sick. Did a Zoom meeting with the jazz band, said, I can't come. What should we do? We could push it off. Maybe we can do it a week later. And the kids basically said, nah, we got this. So it was really cool to see a lot of the students who don't necessarily take leadership roles in other areas, take leadership on stage. And they played 6. They sounded fantastic. Everybody solos. That's kind of the way they do it. It's a really supportive situation. So we're going to do it again at the end of the year. So if anybody wants to come see a jazz band, and I say this as a person who's been in middle school a long time, this jazz band is really good. This is not the sort of introductory bands that sometimes you hear. We held 2 different parent roundtables. One on device usage and internet, which is something that a lot of parents, especially in middle school, struggle with to try to figure out exactly what we can do. And it ranges from take the phones away. Don't let the phones be out at all at school to, we'll just try to do the best we can. So we as a school are trying to figure out how to navigate that going forward. Again, keeping the idea that we're trying to worry about the education that's going on in the school, not necessarily trying to go into all sorts of policing of when people have devices. We had discussions. So the 2 things that were funny about it was people say, well, there's some schools where as soon as you come into a class, you have to put your phone into a little thing. And so I said, well, what's the first thing you do as a student? Get a second phone. So you I have my giveaway phone and then I have my regular phone, which I've seen. The other thing we asked about was, okay, so people can't use their phones. Earbuds now are about this big. So kids have earbuds in all the time. So we have to then, are we policing earbuds as well? Becomes a very difficult conversation that we're hoping to start and work with the parents to sort of try to figure this out. We also had another roundtable with our SAGE students who invited their parents. This was an invitation only event for parents who are sort of facing raising students who are gender expansive. And what that means, SAGE is sexuality and gender equality. So it's a lot of our LGBTQIA and ally students meet on Wednesday mornings. Their parents are sort of trying to figure out what resources are available. It was nice to be able to connect them with other people. So it's something that you don't feel like you're doing by yourself. And it's a scary time to be a parent of any student, but let alone some of these students. So those were 2 kind of really cool things that we did. We met with race parents and MCS parents to sort of start off our transition meetings, just to introduce ourselves. We this week are scheduling time for our guidance counselors to go to 5th and 6th grade and then do actually another parent meeting at the school. Because a lot of it we realized, and I was talking to Tom, like there are parents who have had students in the Richmond school who've never been in the building. So we're starting to try to open the building up again so that they can come over, especially Norwich. I think they had this idea, or even 5th graders think of the building as a giant something that's going to swallow them up. So we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen. We completed our state testing. Many thanks to John Lacrosse, Tom Hermanson, Cindy Robinson, and Glenn Brissinger, who were our tech and testing people. It was the smoothest running testing I've ever seen. I've been doing testing for 15 years. And it went really well, especially because a lot of us don't really agree in the whole idea of high stakes testing, but it went perfectly well. And I think the students didn't get too freaked out. We're in the middle of hiring season. We've had 7 interviews in the last 2 days, so we're working
More
on that. And 4 tomorrow. I handed out, the building is open again. We did something with Hanover Police last Wednesday. Tomorrow night, we're doing something with the Friends of Hanover Lacrosse.
You did the Ukraine fundraiser.
We did the
which
Ukraine
was
fundraiser as well.
Phenomenal. How much did you raise on that? Do you know?
$3,000, I think.
Wow.
And then we were able to also create a bunch of cards, which we sent to Dartmouth Medical, who had put things together and shipped medical supplies to the Ukraine.
The borscht was really good.
The borscht was really good. I think Austin set a record for the largest beet order in the Upper Valley. I'm pretty sure. One of the things that's really neat is that for the last 6 weeks, we've had a group of 5 students who've been working from an assignment that they did in their 7th grade history class right after the studied the Indian removal and the Trail of Tears. So all of the students had come up with a land acknowledgement for the Richmond School. And these students sort of took it on themselves and read through all 140 of those land acknowledgements and have now wordsmithed a draft of the land acknowledgement that they're going to read tomorrow before the lacrosse thing, as we have 2 elders of the Onondaga Nation who are going to be there. And this is something they told me, we met with them the other day. I don't think it's quite ready for prime time and printing yet, but they're working on it and want to make sure that it's something that we can put up that would be sort of in line with our equity statement and our mission and everything else at the Richmond School. So I'm really proud of them for doing that. So Nelson Barabbas, Matt Pellicroce, Luke Harold, Rowan Nova Saad, and Ella Tisson are the 5 students who've been giving up their lunches on Thursdays for the last 6 weeks to be able to do that. I'm trying to think of anything else that's council elections. We're working with the 8th grade on that, finalizing plans for the end of the year. Our math department's been working to update the curriculum information, which we just shared with the Ray and the Marion Cross School to sort of streamline and clarify our placement process, which is always one of the biggest things that people worry about when they come to the Richmond School. Last year at this meeting, we shared data from our parent and student surveys, but this year I forgot to send them out. So we'll wait and do that in May. And if anybody wants to come by and see all of the 3rd quarter woodworking projects, they're up in our lobby for the rest of the week. And then we're going to sort of let everybody take them home. Yeah, that's about it. I do have a copy of the land acknowledgement if people wanted to read it. But since it's not ready for prime time, I didn't want to read it into the record. That's what they told me. So, but I think that's it.
Any questions or comments? Lisa?
One is Mr. Hall worried about his job.
No,
Based
is
upon
not.
that. And the second one is just wanted to make sure that with the placement in math, that you're working to make sure that parents, especially parents of kids who this is their first kid to go to RMS, are
Mhm.
not caught by surprise that there are 3 levels of math classes, which at least when it was my first student, I was sort of shocked by that.
That's one of the things that has actually
uh,
changed.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
so yeah, just there was like very
It
little.
went from 3 to 2.
Okay,
Um,
just making sure
that's-
that gets communicated, because especially for the, I mean, it was a rather stunning revelation when the
So,
placements
yeah,
came
and
through.
right now
so.
we've done, we had some timing issues just because of just personnel. People got sick.
Yeah.
One of the things that happens when you take the mask off, not COVID,
Right,
have tons of strep throat, get tons. So
Yeah.
we're working with the 6th grade now. I
Okay.
think we've
Yeah.
sort of ironed that out when the placement comes for 7th and 8th grade.
Yeah.
And these are things that I've talked to everybody about too. These are conversations that we want to have. They're conversations at the middle school. They're not, hey, this is it, this is where you are, set in stone. This is what we recommend. And the new document is very clear about what we're looking for at the middle school is for students to be successful in math when they get to the 9th grade. Not anywhere along the line. It doesn't necessarily matter where you are halfway through your 3rd quarter in 7th grade. I want you, when you start in September in the 9th grade, to feel comfortable and confident about where you are now. Because that's what will be successful.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that people, we're such a small town and everyone assumes everyone knows everything because people were shocked that I didn't know that.
Right.
So,
And MCS stuff is still a work in progress, so I know that from time.
But that, and I don't see
It's
her,
great
but that's one of the things that Robin has done really well is that those departments are speaking to each other. We had sat down with a long conversation with the Ray School, and we had a long conversation last Friday with Marion Cross about placement in math and everything else as well.
great, thanks.
Lily?
Following on that, it might be useful. I don't know if you or the MCS teachers might be able to communicate that to sixth grade parents. Or at least the
I
process, having had a kid go
Right.
through it, I remember it being farther along at this point, and my son keeps saying, when are we getting math assignments? I don't know what's happening.
so
I don't have.
we, in terms of talking
Yeah.
to Greg, we had a long talk with Greg and forwarded him all of our information
Mhm.
and all of, basically, it's, it's a flow chart, it's a curriculum, it's a philosophy, all of it. So I think he's planning on sending it out pretty soon.
Okay, so you're saying I should email Greg. Bye.
Well, yeah, you should just say, hey,
Information
but,
is
and the other part of it is that, and what we keep saying is we have found that once April break switches, everybody goes into next year
Yeah.
at 1,000 miles an hour. So like, there's still 7 weeks left. There's still a long time before we start the 7th grade. So, it's okay. It's, yeah. It'll be all right. Anything else? Thank you.
And Julie is not here. Oh,
I'm
Hey, Jo-
here.
Hi,
I would-
Julie.
Hi, I'd rather be there, but I'm here, but I am here. Okay, so Josh is correct. I vetoed a motion, which is kind of interesting to exercise that power. But I actually, just so you know, I sent it back saying that I would quickly sign it if the wording of it went like this. All sections of the same course will have the same grade weighting, retake policies, and lateness policies surrounding grading. This will be specified at the beginning of a course in the course standards. So I believe in the spirit of it, it just said this includes, and that made the staff nervous because they didn't know what it excluded. And so I thought, why not clean up the language? But in spirit, I think it's a great step towards equity in terms of our courses of the same, all honors chemistry courses or all, regular CWH courses. So I think hopefully they'll bring it back to me. I mean, they can override me. That's a possibility by 2/3. They could bring it back to me and I could sign it. And then when I sign it, the staff, according to our new motion, can appeal the decision to the principal. So stay tuned. We'll see where it ends up. But kind of fun to see all the democratic wheels in motion and have us exercise them a little bit. So we'll see how it all sorts itself out. In terms of the, we're going back to some of the old things that we have done before COVID in terms of assemblies and proms and unified proms and senior trips. And so we're trying those things back on, and some of us are more nervous than others about those things, and we'll see how they go. And then in terms of new things, just along the lines of what Tim was talking about, we're doing an open building night in June 1st, along with our mega concert, and we have an art show that night too. And our peer leaders are going to give tours of the building because we do have half of our parents probably have never been in the building. So we're hoping that'll be successful in lieu of the open house in person that we didn't do. And then we're trying something different with senior exams and making it part of the class schedule versus turning everybody upside down to get the seniors out before everybody else. So we'll see how that works. And we're trying having our class day, which some of you will be presenting at night. Is not very well attended, and by parents and by staff and by students and their friends. And so hopefully it will be better attended as an evening, because 1 to 3 is sort of an odd time to have an award ceremony for people who aren't school people. So, and then everybody else had class at that time, so they couldn't come. So we'll see if that works. And then, as you can see, based on, I'm sorry about your session later, of all the hiring, we've been on a hiring tear, and really happy with the progress we're making, but it's a lot, and there's still more to do. So hope, and the market is quite crazy, like in terms of people accepting jobs on the spot and saying they think, right? So it's been quite interesting. So hopefully you'll agree with some of the hires that we have tonight, because we're really happy about those. And then we've been talking a lot about different things that we've wanted to do, but kind of cut them out of the budget. And I'm really, really proud of our staff for tightening the belts in certain areas and trying to move things around to allow for a few initiatives that are new for us. One is, and I have this in my report, but we're looking to hire a 1/5 equity steward, or someone to help with the equity in our building in terms of our PD. And so that I wrote about in there. We're repurposing some tutoring money and trying to make a writing center, which hopefully we're going to turn into a tutoring center, but we'll see how the year goes with that, where we train student tutors with a staff member who trains them and then works in that center with them. And a lot more drop. We feel like we could probably meet many more students with that tutoring money than we're meeting by tutoring them. And we're going to try to pilot a 20% instructional coach that we've been talking about for a while. So all of those ads are going up, or have gone up in the last week, and we're hoping to pilot some of those, and maybe that'll help people in the other buildings in terms of how it goes for us. And then also whether there are positions we would want to grow or not, we'll see. But our department heads have been working so hard to make the classes make sense for next year, so we could allow for a little bit of this innovation. And so I have everything to thank them for in terms of working on that. So yeah, I'm sure you might have questions or not, and there's a lot going on. It's not all there, obviously.
Yeah.
Julie, this is Deb. I'm just wondering if you could give me an idea of what subject areas students are planning to take AP exams in.
Oh, I should try to pull up that list, but we have a record number of them. The most are in calculus, but we have students taking, I can probably grab that list that Tom sent us the other day. I mean, there's students we have a number of students who have to take the AP because they want to get into colleges certain colleges that are overseas. And so they're taking, I saw some government ones. I saw the comparative government. I saw a psychology one. There was, sorry, this is the problem of being home. What else did I see? I'm just going to turn it on and off. Sorry. Lots of math. Lots of there was English. We had. Would you want me to pull up the exact list or just send it to you when I get it?
To see it? You
Yeah.
don't need to sit there and try to scramble, but
Okay,
I would
I
like
will.
to know. Thank you.
Probably within the next 5 minutes, it'll end up in your email. But it's
Okay.
a huge variety, and some of them, when I was reading through, I'm like, really? Someone's decided to take that. But I think some of them are motivated too by these European colleges that are requesting 3 APs in order to be admitted. And we have a number of students who are doing that from our senior class this year, more than I remember.
So
Thank you.
Julie, now that a lot of colleges are going to test optional for SATs and ACTs, and we don't have AP courses, and we have always kind of relied on our high scores for kids to get into, schools. Are we thinking long-term, the next couple of years, our students will be able to kind of ride on the coattails of the last couple of classes, but 5 years from now, without SAT or ACT scores, no AP courses, we may not have as much competitive pull as we used to.
That is something I can bring up to the counseling department and ask them sort of their thoughts on that and bring that up if they feel like that's going to be something that's coming up for all of us and whether and how we should address it.
Yeah, Ben wanted to pile on.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, I chair the academic subcommittee of strategic planning. Adding AP courses is under active discussion.
Okay, Kelly?
Two quick things. One, just wanted to point out as part of that ongoing thought process and discussion that there are also a lot of schools who are no longer giving credit for AP scores. Some schools are still, some schools aren't, but there is a shift towards that direction as well. So just something to kind of add to the picture. I primarily wanted to sort of give a big compliment to Julie and to the council in general. I'm the new council liaison, and I think the general sentiment at council this week was that this whole process with the veto and everything was a sign that the process is working really well. That sort of the communication via Julie with the staff and making sure that they all come to a place where everyone is in agreement on these changes, that this process was really smooth and that it's going really well, and they all feel really good about how this has been happening. So just wanted to share that and say thank you to all of them for their hard work on making these changes for the school.
Julie, I had a question about the new positions that the school
Yeah.
community is requesting. Specifically the equity steward. Is this something that you're thinking of proposing for next year's budget, or is that something?
No, it's something we're thinking of hiring for right now at a person who that is their sort of like a safety coordinator, but an equity steward, where we've been talking about it a little bit when the equity committee was talking about it, about how could it be decentralized, this idea of an equity person? Could you have 0.2 in each building and have someone at the SAU pull them together? We've been trying to do equity PD and deal with a number of equity issues this year, but it's not anybody's charge. And so I thought it would be a good idea to have it be somebody's charge, and talk to a few people about it, talk to Jay a little bit about it, and thought, well, if the district can't move on it at an SAU level right now, we could maybe as a building and pilot something, and then we'll have information. It's a 1-year position. And it's only a piece of somebody, so it's 20% of their job. But maybe that will help people who are trying to make decisions on an equity, from an equity lens later. We can say, well, this is what we tried and it didn't work, or it did work.
My first take on that, and obviously I'm not on the equity committee, so I don't really have the insights that's going on as much with that committee, but it would seem like an inequitable approach to have an equity officer at one of the schools where the other schools may not be able to afford to have an equity officer to dedicate to those times. I'm just wary of moving ahead with a position like this without hearing from the equity committee to begin with, because I thought that was the kind of the whole purpose of the equity committee, to standardize equity practice across the district.
Right.
So if you recall, we had this conversation late in the budget process where the board was in I thought, unanimity around the idea of supporting one FTE spread across all the schools. So an idea at that point that the equity committee had put together was sort of compromise to the suggestion that had been made to have an SAU level administrator. And the idea was to have 0.4 at the high school and then 0.2 at each of the other schools for a full FTE. And to the 0.4 at the high school was going to be so that the person at the high school could be the convener of the other folks to try to bring some sort of unity to the effort. And it's my understanding, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, that you, through your sectioning, and you found offsets to accommodate for this addition. And I think there won't be that support in the other schools, but we're proportionally, instead of having 0.4 and 0.2, we've got the 0.2 to get started, or to at least maintain some of the work that's already underway.
Mhm.
That's my take on it.
Yeah, and I get what Tom is saying in terms of, but here we are forging ahead a little bit at the high school, and what about the other schools, and is that equitable? But it's a hard situation. I mean, it's not equitable that we have 750 students and 125 staff members to sort of move along in this process. There's just a lot more training and planning and all that stuff that has to go into it all. And we're just trying to stay on top of what we started 2 years ago, and don't want that to fall and feel like we have a way to capture that. And yeah, maybe it's not great that it's not being captured necessarily at the other schools. We have to figure out other ways to capture it, but also I don't necessarily think it's worth not piloting or letting it fall apart if we can figure out a way to hold it. That's not very eloquent. But I just think, I think if we can keep it going, it may be a motivator in the future or a pilot in the future that makes the budgeting process next year easier for the other schools, because we have something that we've piloted and tried at one of the schools, and either it's going to work or not work. And then you'll have an answer on the equity committee as to whether this is the way to start moving or not.
Lisa.
As a person who is on both equity committees, the one from 2 years ago and then the current one, the high school has been doing equity work for a while on its own. Each school has been doing equity work for a while on its own. Last year, we were able to hire a group that sort of moved all 4 schools together on the same program. That was not possible this year because there was not a budget for it. And so each school is doing their own thing right now just to sort of keep their priorities moving forward. Like the high school is having a book club group that they've all been reading the same book and discussing it. I think some of the other schools have been doing other things that all are their version of equity. And I think that's just happening while we wait for the current equity committee to move along and develop some policy that is more all-encompassing for the district. So I think, I kind of like that experiments are still happening to keep the momentum going from last year while we wait for more formal direction. So.
And this was something that at the Richmond school we looked at, but
Yeah.
structurally we're able, because we have team meetings every day, except for Wednesday, we're able to actually address issues face-to-face with teachers, sort of all at once, which is a little bit more difficult to coordinate in the high school. The high school is bigger, so we have it. It's certainly informal. Administration and some of the people on staff sort of act as our people who have any questions about equity as they come up. But it is one of the school goals, so we talk about it, say at least once a month as a whole staff. But then that sort of team meeting time is really that's the structural coordinator for us, because we're able to put people together and have those discussions, in real time. So that's one of the advantages. That's why we did not sort of look for offsets to try to create, because it already existed.
Thank you, Tim. Kelly?
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of, I guess, support what Julie was saying. I think, it comes back also to the definition of equity versus equality, right? That, what one school needs at one time may not necessarily be what every school needs. And I think that's one of the things I'm sure that the equity committee is working towards, right? Figuring out what each school really needs on this journey. But, when you think about the high school population and the work those kids are doing already in this area, as well as the staff, I think it does make, I see the reason for it personally.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, sorry, just really quickly, I'm going back to the conversation about AP courses, and I would encourage the academic subcommittee to speak with Josh and council, because they spent 2 months worth of council meetings talking about honors load and, what subjects should have honors classes and how many honors classes one student should be able to have without feeling pressure. It was a long and involved conversation that I thought that they handled very thoughtfully, and it just might be good to have someone from council come and talk to your subcommittee as you think about AP and honors and what that load might look like, especially in terms of the stress that kids might be feeling. So
Tom?
did I speak well for you there, Josh?
Just one more thing. So I know this is well intentioned. My concern is where we had gone through this whole process of establishing an SAU-wide committee to come up with an SAU-wide approach. And when we're now looking to commit FTEs to this at one of the schools, it seems like we're really heading in the wrong direction, honestly. I mean, that's just my opinion. I know it's well intentioned. I know we want to keep moving forward with the work that we've got, but I thought the whole purpose of the SAU equity committees was that we would come to a standardized practice across the district.
Deal.
So I can see it both ways, right? I do know that when this board had the discussion, the SAU board, had the discussion and recommendation from the equity committee that there be an equity director position hired at the SAU level. There was some discussion about that. There was a decision by the SAU board at that time to push that back to the equity committee for further discussion. As I reviewed that, I just didn't feel like the equity committee was the right place to continue that discussion. At that time, it was a budget level discussion where we needed to determine whether or not as a board, that's where we wanted the monies to go at that moment in time. My recollection through that discussion also was that the structure of those positions could possibly vary, of having a central person at the SAU level to help coordinate, but that also FTEs would or likely be necessary at each of the individual schools to assist with that work. I do know that from discussions that we had with building administration at the time, that it sounded like some of the efforts that might be undertaken by an equity person may have already been in progress at a lot of the schools. We just didn't have it labeled as such. One of the challenges, though, that I think that we might face in pursuing an equity level position at one of the schools in advance of the completion, at least of a district level equity policy, is I want to make sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves in the implementation work in the absence of the policy being completed. I think it's a bit of it helps put a little bit maybe additional pressure on the equity committee. So now I know that, we have been trying to push forward. It is my intention to get this policy in place as soon as possible, but it takes a little bit of effort and a little bit of work.
And it takes a form.
I'm not opposed to the efforts being made at the high school. I just suggest that we keep a close eye on how it operates and how it works going forward, and that we don't run into a situation, I think, that we quite frankly had before with work going on in one of our schools absent board level approval and board level support of that initiative. And I think that we've got it now. I just want to make sure that we that we proceed wisely on it.
So where do we go from here then? So this was Julie's.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Julie and Kelly.
Yeah.
Can I say something? Was that a yes? I can't tell.
Yes.
Okay. I was just going to say, we made it very clear this is a one-year position. They're not going to create any sort of policy. Like Tim was saying, in all of our buildings, we have people who do this work. I mean, we're educators. Equity should be about what we're about. So we're just recognizing that we might ask someone to be the point on it for next year. And we are happy to, retreat after this year if there's a standard practice that we all need to follow. We have no interest in going rogue as a high school. we will follow whatever practice the equity committee decides that we should follow. It's just that, and here is in what lies the sort of issue in education, I think, is like these 4 years are the only 4 years these kids have at this school. And so if it takes us 3 years to come up with a standardized policy, right, then that's 3 years those kids missed, not a standardized policy, but like to work on something, waiting for a standardized policy, then we're not helping the kids we have now. And so this is what we feel like would help the kids we have now, would recognize the work that's being done in the building already, have someone have their eye on that ball. And the moment that the equity committee comes up with its standardized policy that we all need to follow, I will be the first to get right in line behind whatever we're following, and not say, but wait, we did this a year ahead and this is what we want to follow. We're happy to, I think I speak for most in the building who are interested in this work. They're really happy that there's a board equity committee, and it's coming from the SAU level, but also just concerned for the kids we have now to make sure we're doing the work now, because this is their only time in high school.
Kelly?
I did just want to point out that the council is planning, as Josh mentioned, the council is planning to create an equity committee within council as well. So again, I think having a point person to sort of help liaise with that within the building is potentially a really good idea. I also just had a question, I guess, for Jay or for Rick or Jamie, whomever. In terms of procedure, I don't think that it falls to us to approve these FTEs or not, right? I mean, we approved a budget, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know we ultimately have to approve the hire, so I suppose to some extent we're effectively approving the FTEs, but if this is where Julie and her administrative team have identified need within the building, as I understand it, that's not within our purview as board members, and we can certainly give feedback on it, right? But we don't need to approve that, right?
You're right that we have to approve the FTE. Internal decisions on how they're going to allocate is an internal decision, but this is kind of a different beast because we have initiatives and groups meeting specifically with regards to this position or the responsibility. So I would say it's kind of a hybrid policy slash.
I understand. Yes, I understand the distinction. I was curious, I guess, from a nitty gritty, procedural standpoint, we do not have to approve. Like if there was an extra 0.2 math being allocated, we would not approve that, right?
Well, we would. Yeah. Jay.
So we're not going to be, we had a presentation before the board of what was going on in each school with regard to equity, and we're all different all over the place. And that was kind of the genesis of the discussion with the equity committee about trying to bring some sort of unity to our efforts. We acknowledge, though, that there was good work going on in every school. We're not going to be perfectly equitable or equal, like I should say, in terms of what we're doing or how we're doing it now. I think to Neil's concern, I think knowing where we are with regard to promulgating policy in the policy recommendation, the equity committee, this wouldn't start till next school year. So I think as long as we can push the committee to get that policy done prior to the beginning of the school year, we would have that guidance. And I think in terms of what Julie's looking for pragmatically, she has those efforts going on in the school now that needs someone to shepherd them. And I think if the scope of that 0.2 is limited to that kind of work, I think we'd be okay. And in terms of the perception that different schools have different resources, the Hanover board approved a budget that includes $15,000 or $10,000 for equity training that the other districts don't have. So we're going to be a little different until we as a board impose some sort of standardization. So I would hate to hold back progress in the name of equality if the board could consent to this with regard to, again, keeping all things equal in terms of our budget, despite the reallocation of the FTEs.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, it just didn't really answer my question. That's all. Jay, can you just confirm? Because I'm sorry, I just don't remember. Do we have to approve the 0.2 FTEs for these three, or are those within the purview of the school from a procedural standpoint?
That's, I'd turn to Jamie as far as if this is considered, if these are considered additional FTEs.
They're not additional. She's reallocating.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. That was just the clarification I made. Thanks, guys.
So if she was gonna give that, I don't remember what it is, I read it earlier, 0.2 FTE to an employee who was already on site, you wouldn't even be hearing about it. But possibly because I think this is a new person, right? It's a new hire, then it's coming to you. Because they reallocate FTEs, all the schools do, you know, as long as they're already budgeted. We don't say, whoa, you can't do that, you know, but normally when they're doing it within people who are already hired.
So where do we, oh, Lily?
In the
Tony-
interest,
Tony.
Oh, I'm
oh,
sorry.
sorry, Tony, go ahead.
I just want to express, it seems to me this is money that's already budgeted. The high school has identified a need. There's equity work going on now. There's writing going on now. There's instruction going on now. And if the high school has identified that within the current budgetary constraints that they have, that they want to allocate some of those funds to help with the work that's already happening, that's not a new, it's not a totally new domain for the school that they haven't been addressing. They're clearly addressing equity every day. Probably all the staff is. It doesn't even seem to me that it really, obviously I haven't been part of the discussions, but it rises to a board policy decision. It's just a way for them to address, it seems to me, the work that's going on with the budget they already have. So my thoughts.
Lily?
In the interest of not being here till 11 p.m. because we can't vote on anything tonight, I would suggest that we wait till we have something we can vote on
We would be voting.
to further discuss this.
No.
They're not.
They're not in the,
Employees
they're
haven't
not in the
hired.
list.
They're not on the
This
actual-
is new.
So Julie, we're gonna go ahead and table the discussion.
And Julie has
Okay.
something.
Can I say one more thing, but about its APs? And
Yes.
also, someone can give me advice at some point about my principal's report, because I kind of try to put things in there so everyone realizes what we're doing, even though I'm not asking necessarily for approval on it. I just wanted you to know what was going on, but I don't want to complicate things by throwing stuff in there that we do on a daily basis in terms of reallocating. But I just wanted you to feel like, because I think sometimes during a budget process, we feel like we're stifling innovation because we have to trim numbers. And I just wanted you to know that we're still trying to innovate. And so don't worry so much but that was sort of why I threw it on there. So you knew we're still doing stuff, even though the bottom line has to be tight. Like we're trying hard to keep things moving. And then really, really quickly for Deb, because other people might want to know, AP US History and Government, 5 kids taking it, 6 kids taking AP Chem, 5 kids taking Environmental Science, 1 Psychology, English Literature and Composition. We have 6 kids taking AP Government and Politics. We have Computer Science. We have 5 kids taking Human Geography, 3 kids taking Macroeconomics. We have 4 kids taking AP Statistics. We have like 12 kids taking European History, a kid, US History, a kid, Macroeconomics versus Micro. We have another 6 or 8 kids. And then Calculus, we have, I don't know, 25 or 30 kids taking. So that's the list.
Thank you, Julie. Any other comments or questions? So we're gonna move on to business required discussion. Staff, what?
Just as if we have it
Discussion.
Staff Appreciation Day. Jay.
So I have a proposal for Staff Appreciation Day that has potential contractual ramifications. So I'd prefer to pass the idea by the board during our non-public session.
Okay. Good. Jamie, tuition rates for 22-23. This is like we talked about last week at Hanover.
Yeah, this one's done differently than Hanover,
Yeah.
as I'm sure you recognize, and I apologize, I'm not used to giving Hanover a copy of the work, but I will provide it for you, and it just dawned on me when I read this one, I went, oh, I forgot to do that. Because we do it via a spreadsheet, and so it is available. This is Exhibit 5 from the budget documents that we use when we go through and ratify the budget, but it has been updated because of the change, the addition of the 2 warrant articles, 4 and 5, from the support staff and teachers union agreements. It's also now includes the Dresden technology payment up top in the capital costs. So it's based on a prior year base amount for the high school, which is done different than the middle school. That was established, I'll get this date wrong because I didn't pull out all my documents, but I think it was established back in, it was before me, 13-14. They established a base number that's a prior year base, and you'll see that it listed like right by line 10. And then that base is adjusted each year by the percentage that sits in line 9. Okay. The capital cost calculations at the top are based on the percentages up there are based on agreed to percentages way back when the building projects, the big huge debt that we had, 43 million, was spent 20-something, 3-4 years ago. So that under column A, I just haven't fixed all the little letters, sorry. The building debt of the 63.05% and the balance to RMS was established way back. It hasn't changed. The drainage and turf is 100% high school. The Dresden Tech is done by a breakdown of what actually goes to each of the schools. And then the field bonds, 100% high school. So we do an adder, if you will, of capital costs to the base amount to get the tuition rate for high school. That's how that one works. The Richmond Middle School tuition is a base tuition that we do very similar to Hanover's, where we take the prior years, it's done on a 1-year lag, prior year budget, and you pull out anything that's direct to the school itself, meaning like special ed costs and capital costs within the school to take care of the school. Okay, not capital costs, like if you're building additions and stuff like that. And so we come out with a base number there, and then we do the adder from the big building debt on A. And then we come out with the tuition rate for the middle school. And middle schools are historically higher than high schools. And those fluctuate because they're, they fluctuate because of your student count, right? So the student count for high school is the divisor is 690, and for the Richmond Middle School is 357. Okay, those change every year, so if they go up or down. We've been trending down on our numbers at the high school, so it goes up a little bit each year. I do know there was a question, not that Norwich cares about this, but at the Hanover meeting, why that one went down. It's because the student count went up significantly from the prior year.
Any questions? Thank you, Jenny.
Are the numbers trending down for both Hanover and Norwich, non-Hanover Norwich students as well as Hanover Norwich students, or is it one or the other that's trending down?
Yeah, the tuition students are dropping off. Tuition, yeah. As well as, we go through these little, and come back up a little bit and then go back down. And so, and I've only been here, this might be we're going into my 7th year, and I haven't had time to go back in the last 7, 10, 12, 15 years. But I remember hearing and seeing the numbers that we were trending down up until about the last 2 years, 3 years, and then the elementaries have been rising. So it's a matter of what I think when we discussed it earlier, and Neil will know because he's been here on the board for a long time, and Don, is that the elementary sometimes move out to other locations. And also Dartmouth College, because of the different programs they have, our elementaries will sometimes swell. And then the folks move on back to their home, states or countries. And so they don't come all the way up through. But interestingly enough, we're projecting next year that the middle school is coming up a lot and the high school is dropping almost by the same amount. So I think we're just having some, swells coming through. So, but I've thought about, I want to go back, Tony, and look at what the percentage is and if there's a pattern that occurs.
Thank you. Retreat topics. This should be short, right? We're just gonna, so the 3 retreat topics. So the meeting is going to be May 14th at the Richmond Middle School from 9 to 1 p.m. The agenda will be board member introductions, a legislative update, and an update on strategic planning. Has any of the 4 chairs reached out to the legislators?
That was gonna be my first question. Do you want me to?
So
reach out
I
to
have
them?
not reached out. Are you gonna reach out to Vermont?
I'm happy to. Is it both senators and reps?
I think we just need,
Oh,
I was gonna invite, what was her name?
Sharon Nordgren.
You were gonna reach out to Sharon?
No, I was telling her to get her husband to come.
Well, I
I'm
think
kidding,
I
but-
mentioned though that, so my husband's a legislator, but one of us has to take our kid out of state that day, so one of us won't be.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna invite, not Nordgren, the other.
Did Mary Hacken Phillips?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Sue Prentice is the senator.
I think what we agreed was that we should invite the ones that are either involved with appropriations or education. Right, or education. So.
Yeah, I don't, several of our legislators aren't on like relevant, so I don't know.
We've got Jim Masson's on a very relevant committee, right?
Okay.
It's Ways and Means,
Ways and Means,
because
right.
it's overseeing a lot of the education funding stuff. And I don't think, what are the senators, not any on the ed?
No, not that I'm aware of, but I mean, I would make, do what you want. New Hampshire is a different animal because you got
Oh,
a
yes, it is.
ridiculously large body.
Yeah.
But New Hampshire, Vermont is small enough that even though those reps or senators don't sit on
Yeah.
what you would consider to be an education impacting committee, I think that their input and their insight is still
Oh,
valuable.
yeah, I'm not telling you in Vermont on who you should invite. I think in New Hampshire, we've got 5 reps,
We have 4.
4,
And one
And one
senator.
and 1
senator.
senator.
Well, 2 of our 4 from Hanover Lyme are on the Ways and Means
Yeah.
Committee.
Okay.
And Mary Hacken Phillips also was on the
Yeah.
Hanover Finance Committee before she ran for office. So
I
think she
will
would be a good person.
email all 5 of them and invite them and
Okay.
say, we don't need we don't need all 5, but feel free, we'd love to have you. So, okay.
Okay.
I can do
Um,
the same. I'll invite the 3 senators and 2 representatives then.
From Vermont,
From our side, then.
sounds good. Yes, Jake.
No, I did nothing.
Board evaluation surveys. So the surveys just went out today, so we're going to push this off to next week. We should have received 3 surveys. Accounts payable approvers. So Jamie is looking for 2 new approvers. It's time to switch up. Who has it now?
I don't know
We
why this
just
is on
changed
here. I'm
ours,
sorry.
actually.
Yeah, we just changed.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. I didn't catch that. 'cause
Well, you
it's
weren't on our
actually-
planning call, and I think Rhiannon just went off of the.
Well,
master
because
schedule.
we choose that in
Yeah.
your own,
Yeah.
we choose them in Hanover and Norwich.
Yeah.
It's just Dresden follows and then moves
Okay,
around.
good.
So we're good. That's,
The one, check it out.
check it off.
Policy DFA, this is another kind of pro forma. This is an annual requirement
Every year.
every year. So does anyone have questions about this policy? Nope. Residency and tuition.
I'll be really brief about this. I spoke to the Norwich board about this particular situation, but we increasingly are receiving requests from parents who, for one reason or another, wish to either send their Hanover student to Marion Cross or to send their Norwich student to RMS. And I don't have the authority and policy that I can find to allow tuition waivers unless we're in a situation where a student is moving out of district and wishes to finish out either junior or senior year at the high school. I do have some latitude there, but I have a case, for example, where I have a student who is currently at the Ray School. Parents are moving to Norwich. They will not close on their home until September.
Moving to Hanover.
No, they're
They're at the
in
Ray
Hanover
School.
moving to
Oh,
Norwich.
Okay.
And so their student, who is currently a fifth grader at the Ray School, would have to move to Norwich, be there for sixth grade, and then come back to rejoin classmates at RMS. And they've asked if it would be possible for the student to just go to sixth grade at RMS, even though they've moved, though they will have moved in September. There are financial considerations, I know. Again, there's not policy, but I thought I'd bring it to Dresden just to put it on your radar. I think it's something that we need to maybe bring to policy committee and take a good look at this, especially in light of the work that the task force did already and getting the warrant article that we had approved, where we've kind of set the stage for the possibility of a little more back and forth. But the way that particular warrant article is written, it needs to be, RMS would have to be the designated school for Marion Cross for sixth grade in order for that sort of transfer. So we have considerations like past practice. We have some situations where these requests have been refused in the past. And so to honor them, we would have to have, I think, conditions laid out and explain that from now on, here's what we're going to consider. And we would need to limit it such that we're not having to add staff if we start to allow these sorts of cross river, I guess, for lack of a better word, hardship cases. Well, we have provisions in the law right now that if there's a manifest educational hardship or an educational best interest, we have the ability to allow students to either attend out of district and pay tuition or to receive students from other districts on the New Hampshire side. Or if they're designated school, if they're in Norwich and they're designated schools at Dresden School, we can do that with them under that context. But we can't do it inside our own boundaries. And so I just need more guidance, because if I had my choice, I would grant this request, but I don't believe I have the authority.
So are we making a decision tonight?
No, I just wanted to put it out there for discussion.
Okay.
It's going to take some more work, and I think it might make sense for policy committee to discuss it.
Tom?
And to clarify, it's just sixth grade, correct?
Right.
And
That's
so that would have to be pretty clearly stated there as well, but hope maybe even as part of the strategic planning process, we can look at sixth grade.
Sure.
Right. Well, that was my question, because I'm sorry, I thought the example you were talking about was a student.
Fifth grade or sixth grade.
Okay, because below that, right, what we're talking about is actually two separate school districts. That's no longer Dresden. That's
Below that,
Right.
correct, right.
And that's not what you're talking
No,
about.
Just
this is
here.
the requests I'm dealing with most.
Where you're
frequently
actually, so now but actually, because of our current configuration with sixth grade in Norwich, you're talking about Norwich, Dresden. Those two districts.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think the discussion needs to happen both in Dresden and in the Norwich School District.
Which is why I brought it to Norwich first.
Yep.
Yeah.
We did, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So in Norwich, we did talk about this, and I think I brought up the point that Jay's issue does seem like it's a little bit pressing and it's pretty black and white. So just from a decision standpoint, I mean, we could be talking about this for another year and this family's not gonna have a decision. Because the problem is you open this up, and I think that's where it gets really dodgy, is all of a sudden that people can just say, hey, you know what, I would rather send my kid to the race school because I like it better. That's where all of a sudden this gets really slippery. But for Jay's point, it's like so black and white, it's like one case. And so I guess the question is, do we have to like give them the approval to do this 1 hour case, or how are you guys gonna?
It's not.
That's not
Good. I think that the specific case, we could have a separate non-public, maybe at Norwich. But the the tuition is the issue. Like this family could do this if they simply paid the tuition. And we have families, that's the other complicating factor. We do have families that have paid tuition to send their kids cross river. Either they've moved and wanted their kids to, same thing, they wanted their kids to be able to stay with their friends. And then we start running into equity issues where if it's can they afford it? And do we make some provision for cost? There's just a few different layers to this that I think warrant consider. Maybe policy committee is not the right committee. Maybe we need an ad hoc committee to address just this issue. But I'm hoping we can get together sometime fairly soon and I can give this family some preliminary guidance. But they're with us either way in one of our two schools.
But again, sorry.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I thought that moving the Marion Cross sixth grade over to RMS was part of the strategic planning process. So this might be taken care of, right? Or no? I mean, not for this, but I'm just saying in terms of like forming another committee. I'm not sure we need another committee if it's going to be addressed by the strategic planning committee. That was my only point.
Sure, except for this particular student.
Except for this particular student. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's not quite so black and white, at least not to me. But also, if we're talking about one student, shouldn't all of this be in non-public?
All of this discussion?
Yeah.
I'm not naming the student or no. I don't feel it's a policy concern. I'm using one example, but if we talk about the specific individual, I think that would be something that we could do in non-public.
So when do you need to have a resolution by? They're moving, so it's not.
They're not moving till September. So soon, but not immediately.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Good.
We're working on other stuff.
Yeah, we were, yeah.
I will note that how did we get here is 11 slides.
Yes.
Yes. So I can go through it relatively quickly.
I was not implying anything.
I like the visuals though.
Oh, thank you. Can you tell we're middle school people? I talked about this a little bit, sort of the beginning of this at the last school board meeting when we talked about the fact that our professional development the previous Friday had one session scheduled about scheduling from 8 to 9:15 in the morning. And we ended up having 3. We thought we were going to get 12 to 15 people who talk about specific scheduling stuff. We ended up with 40 to 45 people who stayed for 3 hours, including 2 to 3 o'clock on the end of a PD day, which anybody who's been at a PD game knows that that's pretty significant. And it's just the reason we put it in as a perfect storm is it really is something that all came together all at once. We had never talked to the main crux. There are a couple main cruxes in this, but the main crux is the elimination of double English, which has been part of RMS 7th and 8th grade for a long time. Going back to the idea that this was going to be time that would be devoted specifically to writing instruction. And it's been there for, I mean, we have people say we've talked about getting rid of double English for 25 years. And there really wasn't ever a way to get rid of it without talking about also eliminating somebody's job, which is pretty much a non-starter in a community like ours. It's not gonna be like, yeah, this is a great educational thing and too bad we'll see you, you gotta go out the door. But we have some retirements this year that sort of made it possible that we could discuss it without jeopardizing anybody's job. So if we go to eliminating double English, it then allows us to move forward with a plan in 7th and 8th grade to create actual genuine bona fide teams in the true middle school model. So we would have 4 academic teachers who would teach all the same students. They would have daily meeting times when they would be able to meet with each other. We would also set it up so that the 2 teams they would have a team meeting time, and then they would have a planning time where you could meet with the department who was on the other 7th or 8th grade team. So you could have a math meeting time and a team meeting time. So we would be able to meet the needs of the students. We would be able to plan more together curricularly. It would do away with people who have to go back and forth, teaching half and half, 7th and 8th grade, mostly in science and social studies. It would involve some other things that I think people are really excited about. Sort of codify a teaching and writing across the curriculum, which we do a lot of anyway. We teach a lot of writing in social studies. We teach a lot of writing in science. We teach some writing in math, not a lot, but we can move in that direction. It would allow us to be more flexible. It would allow us to sort of do a lot of the SEL stuff that we've been talking about for a number of years. I'm trying to think of anything else. It would allow us to continue to focus on the students. We had Robin Steiner came by today. We had Mike Lapine and Sarah Ellis, who was our art teacher. We're doing a combined, basically a combined art science project that they're working on today and then on Friday. Visually representing graphs with watercolors. These are the kinds of things that we can do better if we have that sort of flexible schedule where people can work together. Educationally, it really is the model of a true middle school, the way it should be, and not the sort of hybrid. Some examples of sort of, and again, this sort of took off on both NSN and myself. Like we thought maybe, okay, well, it went away. So people are really running with it. They're very excited about it. We've had math teachers who have been at the school for a long time, who are currently teaching 2 preps, who in a meeting said, I know that if I do this is someone who would teach 8th grade math. And if we wanted to keep the true teaming thing together, this person would have to teach 3 preps. They'd have to teach algebra, they'd have to teach geometry, and they'd have to teach 8th grade pre-algebra. They were on board. Again, you're asking a teacher who has been doing something to pick up a new course, teach 3 preps. And the other part of it, which I'll get to in a minute, is that they would create a new course. So the way that this would work, we'd have 2 teams. 6th grade would stay the same. And the other thing about this is that we already have a model on how true teaming works in the building, because that's the way the 6th grade is set up. They all meet all the time together. They have all the same students. They plan everything together. There's no back and forth. Basically, all of the students are in the same math. So everybody takes the same classes, the same teachers, etc. So it's already there. We would set up the same thing in 7th and 8th grade. Each teacher would teach 4 sections of their academic class instead of the 5 that they do now. And then they would teach what we started out calling the +1, but as people were talking about it, they talked about the thumb. So you'd have 4 sections and then the thumb, which would be a new class. It's skills-based. It's based in your, whatever your discipline is. And it would be something that you would teach all of the students throughout the year. Teachers would continue to teach 5 academic classes a day as a full-time teacher. The students would take all of those classes. How it's divided up would depend on what the team would want to do. But things that we foresee in this class are things because of the curriculum in middle school, people keep adding things to it, right? National standards, they're always adding. Common Core is adding. If you look at the national standards for social studies in 7th grade, it's like 158 grade level expectations. Well, they're all only 180 days in school. Like that's a lot to do. So in trying to get all that done, there's stuff that has always been left out of the curriculum, which a lot of the teachers who've been doing this for a long time will tell you about. One of the things I'm a social studies person, that's classic, is research. It's hard to find time to do sort of an extensive research project if you're trying to get from the Constitution through Reconstruction, right? +1 or the thumb would allow for that. It would allow for time in math classes that if you study the math curriculum, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, there are things that we call like little branches that are sort of introduction to things that will come later on. The classic one is probability. There's a little bit of probability in 7th grade, but then you don't get it again until like algebra 2. So people are sort of trying to figure out, well, I'm trying to prepare the students for algebra. They don't really need that. That could be something else that could be done in that +1 class. Obviously, science, they're already coming up with all kinds of design electives for whatever they could do in science classes. It would have to be enrichment. It would be graded. It would be a real class. It would be something, and this is what we talk to the staff about. If this is going to work, that class has to be something that is going to engage the students in ways that we haven't been able to engage them before. So that would be the 4+1. It's basically the setup that we have. I'm trying to think, I'm kind of jumping around here. How do we do it? By eliminating double English and with a retirement. And then also we have a 0.4 computer position that is open that we would also fold back into this, because we discovered that we talked to the people in computers. Most of what we teach now in computer classes is taught in regular classes. And it's taught sort of on an as needed basis. Hey, you need to create a presentation. We'll do a quick thing. Here's Google Slides. The students do it themselves. Like, okay, I need to figure out how to make a graph or a chart from this on Google Sheets. What do? You Google it. How do I make it? And it shows you, it walks you right through it. You don't necessarily, and then they're actually using it in an authentic way when they need it, as opposed to one semester long 7th grade class where they do a little of this and a little of that, and maybe a little Excel. And then, maybe you don't use it again until the 11th grade. So we talked to the people who are teaching computers before. We think this is something that we can fold into what we already do with digital literacy and digital citizenship and everything else. So we think we could address these in other ways. So we basically, this is where we did a lot of the offsets. We worked as hard as we could, but we did come down to, it would be a 0.8 FTE increase in what we're currently budgeted for. Which I think in terms of what we could offer to the students would be a huge boon for the students. And it also allows for much more flexibility going forward. It allows for possibility of doing things that we haven't been able to do before, which some people educationally, you can or can't, but the idea of looping is out there. So you can have teachers who would stay with students for more than 1 year. There's just a lot more in terms of flexibility. That would happen. It also allows us to have, it's not an elective, but it essentially gives us another way for adults to connect with students outside of the standard, more rigid curriculum. Our curriculum at RMS isn't very rigid, but it's still reading, writing, arithmetic, right? So there's still parts of that. Going forward. I'm trying, do you want to jump in here? Because this is all of the first thing that happened is that everybody came and said, we want to do this, we want to do this. And I went to this and I'm like, can we make it work? Can we actually fit this into the schedule in some way, or we have to blow everything?
I made it a color-coded spreadsheet.
Right, it's beautiful. I don't do color coding, so that's the last couple pages, but I'll go back to you. But the last couple pages too, we did we talked to the students about tying things to research and citing. So the research is out there that the middle school model really is in terms of addressing a lot of the needs that we need to address. Is the best way to do it. I mean, I'm sure you all have the same conversations that we do. The main concern that most of the parents have in the Dresden school district is pressure, right? Is the students are really sort of freaked out. There's a lot of anxiety. This has definitely happened. Now, this we feel is another way, again, we can build these connections that we might be able to address those things as well. So we got it, so it worked in the schedule. I think it's fair to say that this is, and pretty much, again, we are not a unanimous bunch as educators in general. As middle school educators, we tend to sort of go with the flow, but the amount of enthusiasm for this is remarkable. There are some people who are like, well, what, can we, one of the questions would be, well, why do it now? Like someone did say, well, why can't we just wait? And the question we asked is, I don't know what we would know next year that we don't know now. I don't know what we could do. It's not really something that you can pilot just because of the way the FTEs work out. I mean, you could, if you could, hire a 0.2 here and a 0.2 there and all these other kinds of people around. But it seems like the kind of thing to strike when the energy is high. Also that people are willing to make the changes right now, given what we've gone through in the last 2 years. We had originally sort of said, well, we don't know if we want to do this because everybody's exhausted. It's been the last 2 years. But one of my teachers said, yeah, we're exhausted. It's not going to get any better. Like, we can't just go home and, you know, sleep for the summer. We're still going to be exhausted. This would give us energy. This would give us something to plan for. This would give us something that we want to move forward on. I don't know if you have anything else.
It really, for me, is that, yeah, making those connections that we have with students even stronger. You know, making those teams so they're true. More, yeah, touch time through that enrichment class, so that +1 period.
Yes.
Is this cohorting the students, when you talk about teams, is it just the teachers are in teams, or is it the same 16 students are together for all their classes?
The same number of students would be together, but not all in the same classes together.
So that it'd be mixed, so the group, so if a team is 70 or 75 students, those students would be mixed in their 4 academic classes throughout the day or in their +1 class. They would be mixed with the other half of the grade level in their elective classes or in their string or band and music ensembles. Those would be other mixings of.
And the electives would stay the same, so
Yeah.
there'd be everybody mixed up in the class.
Yeah, limited kids connections. It's not that like the COVID year where you were with the same 20 students all year long and you learn to love each other.
Ben?
Or not.
I really like this idea. It seems intuitive and straightforward and would best address the students and the teachers. I'm trying to frame this nicely, but I guess my mind is blown that if I'm understanding you correctly, this was held up by one teacher.
No.
No, not by.
Or
No, it's
our
the
feelings towards one teacher.
No, the structure
Two.
of it.
Two.
Well, and it's a collegial thing, right? So it's not necessarily, it would be, first of all, it's a huge change, right? To go, right now, 8th grade English meets double periods 4 days a week. So that's, we have more English teachers in the 8th grade. They meet fewer students for a longer period of time. That sort of making that shift. And again, I don't know, because this is the first time it's come up when we've sort of been in this position to do this. So I can't speak sort of what happened in the past. I think also that there was some, at some level, the numbers probably made it seem like, yeah, I don't know how to answer that question. Because this was the model when I went to the Richmond School in 1850. This was the way.
It's really, for me, about the core of the middle school. The core of the middle school, and I heard it today when we were having conversations and people were talking about, was people caring for each other. I've served on so many scheduling committees during my time at RMS, and we come up with so many different versions. But then when you look at what it means as far as potentially impacting a colleague's job, no scheduling committee or is going to say, oh yeah, we should do that. And we're going to lose 2 full-time colleagues, 2 full-time English teachers to make that shift. Or
two
2
good
full,
things for the students and the other faculty.
yeah, we take care of each other and our kids.
So I had a question.
It's a rough political stance, even if
He
you
said it's a problem.
So with regards to the hiring, so it's a 0.8 FTE increase.
Correct.
How do we, so you're gonna be a 0.2 in math, a 0.8 in social studies, 0.8 in science. Where are these bodies coming from?
Are you looking at the?
I'm looking at the proposal.
What do you mean, the actual people? Or
Yeah.
do you mean
Yeah, so do we think we're gonna be able to hire?
we sort of snuck and put in an anticipated
So I can
anticipated
answer that.
opening?
Right, so
Okay.
when they brought this forward, the idea, they had initially, when we did the budgeting process, added 3.2, right?
To make it 16 sections.
3.2s to even out the sections during budget process. So when they sent I was the one that went, whoa.
Yep.
So when they sent the thing through to put those out there, they asked, how can we potentially take this to ones if the board approves this situation? Because they didn't want to potentially lose out on any people that might be supremely qualified, right? So we put out anticipated positions as well as the 0.2s. So we've covered both bases. If you say no, that's fine. They go back, they keep it. We do the 0.2s. If you say yes, today, whenever, then we also have a pool of candidates that may be available for an anticipated position. Just means that it's not been approved yet.
We were willing, basically, I said I was willing to talk to people and say, yes, it's anticipating. If it didn't come through, then I would say that that's on me, but I didn't want to wait and lose out.
So there's advertisements out there, it's saying anticipated position.
Yeah, correct.
Neil,
So the request then before the board tonight is to approve a 0.8 that was not included in the budget.
Not
So this is
budgeted, correct.
to approve
Yeah.
spending of a
Yeah.
0.8 unbudgeted
Right.
position.
And we've tried to project as best we can, obviously, because you can't figure out benefits or retirement plan. They have said that they will hire the best candidates, but try to also keep it within, the masters 4-5 areas.
so we're
Yeah.
talking about a
Or less.
range of 60 to about 100,000.
Right, the 60 should cover the salary easily. The
No,
only-
no, but
Yeah.
an additional 60 to 100,000 on the budget.
Correct,
Yeah.
because we don't,
So-
yeah,
So where are we on our budget this year? Are we
it wouldn't be this year, for next year.
for next? Oh, okay, so,
So right now,
well, then,
I was looking through all the new hires that you've done for Richmond Middle School
Yeah.
at this point in time. And even with the 15 or however many it is tonight, you're gonna come out almost even between the ups and the downs. It's like $1,800 difference.
okay. So, and the reason this is not going into our next budget cycle is because we need it in place by the start of the school year.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Neil,
So I would recommend then the motion that you see later on in the package, I would change that motion. And I would pull it out of the consent agenda. I think what you want to do is approve the hiring of an additional point FTE and then maybe put an upper limit on that salary plus benefits amount associated with that point
not
FTE.
to
I see,
exceed 100,000.
yeah, I mean, I see 97 as a high mark in here. I don't know if you feel comfortable with that
Yeah, that's as
97.
high as it could, well, that's as high as it could go, assuming we don't hire,
Everyone.
PhD and,
Right.
all of those.
So we
And
could
we-
do it not
just-
to exceed 100,000.
Just to float it out there, so we run 5 tours for possible tuition students.
Yeah, it
already
doesn't matter,
this
it doesn't allow you to spend more.
Why not?
That's
Okay.
New Hampshire law, Tim, I'm
Trying, I'm
sorry.
trying.
It will help the next year's
Okay.
Yep.
offset, perhaps.
So any more questions? Thank you. Oh,
I just have a question. Budgetarily, where does the money come from? How is it approved? If the budget's
So
already-
we would authorize them to do a hire up to not to exceed 100,000. Jamie will do her magic. There's money that's
Well, historically, because your budget's so large, right?
there's underspending and
Exactly.
additional
So
revenue,
because-
and
Yeah.
Moving
you
things
move around.
around.
we're not gonna do what
It's
Croydon's
not
doing.
magic. It's that you're budgeting so far ahead, 9 months ahead of your school year opening, that there's usually a lot of changes in turnover, right? And so historically, you're gonna see it later tonight. These poor guys are over because we told you way back during budgeting that benefits went crazy, right? Everybody came on and retirement stuff went nuts with the new people coming on, but we've got that budgeted for next year, right? As much as it goes up crazy, it can go back down crazy, because you'll see on the high school's financials for tonight, they're below. So they're kind of covering each other's butts, if you will. So there's usually always, Tony, about a 1%.
So it's a reallocation.
Yes, yeah, and it's legal.
And that's what happens at the end of the year.
I hope so.
When we have not a surplus, but whatever the term is, we can vote to retain it for next year.
Correct.
I like to think of it a little bit differently. I like to think going in worst case scenario, right?
Right.
You're budgeting an unbudgeted position. You're gonna need
Yeah.
to make it up in next year's budget.
Right.
you may find during the course of this school year that we're going into, right? Or the one that we are about to finish, that there are some surplus funds that will allow you to cover that. But I like to think of this as an unbudgeted position, and you need to make that up in the following year's budget if nothing better happens in between.
Yep.
I can't vote, but I think this is, I mean, I would just like to say, I do think that I do appreciate the, you know, the effort that has gone on over there. So I hope that everyone supports it, because it does seem like a pretty substantial initiative, when at the end of the day, people could have just kind of cut bait and gone home and said, I'm tired. So if this is something that motivates people and kind of gets them running, it kind of feels like the curriculum's advancing. I think it's, I mean, it seems like if we don't approve it, there's going to be a lot of people who are like, wow, that's not. wasn't a very good situation. A lot of
That
work
would be
went
part
into
of it, but the other thing is it wouldn't go away. So I
Yeah.
think people are sold.
Ben, I think you do it now while you, before you forget all the numbers, now it's going to work.
Ben?
Yeah.
Oh, did you have your hand up?
I did not, but I'll say something anyway.
No, that's right. You don't have to.
Tim and Jay, can you guys foresee any unanticipated consequences of this or anything negative? And it is a one.
Jay?
I wouldn't say anything negative. I think precedent wise, we've got to do a better job of making sure that we do this sort of research and this planning in advance of, or in concurrence with the budget process. I get that this came about because we had time in March and teachers got a chance to finally decompress and actually plan. But again, this is just another advertisement for the importance of strategic planning, because this is sort of exactly the sort of thing we should be talking about in the context of strategic planning and looking ahead, so that you all know what to anticipate in terms of changing structures and funding them. We as an administration don't want to be in the habit of coming to you to say, oh, by the way, I think we didn't budget enough, we need some more money. But this does, I am impressed by the depth of work that the folks did, and I do agree that I never did quite understand the double English. And while I totally empathize with the idea that you want to hurt colleagues and you're making those sorts of budgetary decisions, I think at some point, as much as we do things democratically and with teams, I think at some point those hard decisions have to be made administratively. And if we in the future encounter things that we think are really in the best interest of kids, we need to have those discussions probably early in the budget process to say, I don't think we're going to need that many English teachers.
Right, and part of this too, to be perfectly honest, you know, comes out of the 2 years we've been in, right? So we just haven't had that capability to sit down and ask, and you know, it was that was part of this was supposed to be sort of the beginning part of this plan, and definitely part of it was, okay, we have double English, what is it getting us? Like, what are we getting out of it? And I for one vastly underestimated sort of people's willingness to sort of go forward and use whatever cliche you want to without grabbing the bull by the horns or whatever. But people, and I think part of it is too, is that they realize people have been sort of not stuck, but people have been fairly comfortable doing what they were doing. And if anything else, the last 2 years showed us that, hey, we can create an entire remote curriculum in a week, right? We can figure out the cohorting thing over the summer and make it work and make it things that people never thought they were going to be able to do before. We had people in our building teaching in classes that they hadn't taught in a number of years. So people sort of got rejuvenated by that. And I hope that would be something that would continue.
Just so going into next year, have you got some ideas as to where some of the cost savings might be if this is approved to go ahead? Because I mean, you do now have a full year to think through what budget was approved to be able to offset some of this $60,000 to $100,000. Because the other way I see it too is obviously this is a new FTE, but it's not just one new FTE for 1 year. This is a whole new. This is one new FTE for
Many years.
I mean, we would continue to do sort of some of the things that we have found that our budgets tend to roll over from year to year a lot of times, but sometimes, and it's, oh, okay, yeah, well, we definitely need this, this, and this. And if people have the idea of, okay, do we really need to buy a new, you know, class set of something? this year, or is there something we can do digitally? Is there something we can do
Well,
that
does
doesn't
this-
involve the offset, the output of a bunch of money?
Does this proposal mitigate or address other things that you've either put into the budget or put on your wish list for the
It
budget?
definitely, it would, our feeling was that it would definitely mitigate needs for interventionists, needs for, to a certain extent, Julia talked about it earlier, we did sort of the idea of a bunch of different schools have talked about instructional coaching in terms of specific FTEs. If we have, we can train people on teams through instructional coaching and train trainers and can go into each other's classes without having to create sort of more administrative positions. I think that that's one of the main things that this would mitigate. We would just, we would not have to create other positions because we would have people who would be working closely enough together that we could address those issues sort of on a regular basis. And I think that that's something that we have talked about quite a bit, is that one of the real strengths at RMS is that people are very flexible. It's a pretty flat leadership structure. And it's something that we want to keep that way. We don't, if we create FTE, if we ask for extra FTE, I want them people in front of students. I think that we can continue to do what we do with the two of us and the able help of the people up in the front office, but the more really qualified people I can put in front of students, the better the educational experience is going to be.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie. I will note that 1, 2, 3, 4 of our proposals, they said thanks, but no thanks. So I would just focus on we met the requirements for RFPs.
Yeah, it was sent, as I posted it so people could see, it was
Yeah.
sent to 12 different banks
Okay.
via email. It was blind copied to 12 different banks via email. In working with Renelle Lahoulier, who's a bond attorney, she had provided me a list of different banks who had been active within the region and gave guidance that, do as many as you can. Normally, we do the 6 locals. You will notice that I did not include Ledyard because the last 3 times we've included Ledyard, they've explained to us that they do not do school district financing. Okay, they don't do government financing. So I didn't want to put them on the hook to have to do another email.
So the one that we got back
Is our
from
own
Mascoma,
bank.
Yep.
That is our own bank. They
And they did the field, right? The football field?
What's that? Yeah, they did
Yeah.
the turf field. Yep.
Okay.
We do deal with them. And so I think part of it may have been because we wanted to go 15 years and TD Bank had explained that they wouldn't go past 10. Some of them it's just their time horizon. So that may be some of the reason why we did not hear back from the others. Mascoma Bank, the rates come in at 2.55 fixed. No penalty, they met all of the parts of the RFP.
And 2.55 is.
It's a little bit higher than what we had initially spec'd in January, but the rates have gone, the Fed increased the rates. The problem being, I think it was 2.2 in January. I didn't go back and look, but I think it was 2.2. So it's the 0.25% that the Feds upped the rates this last time.
And if we don't select Mascoma now, the chances are that the rate's going to continue to increase.
Correct, because I'll have to go back out to RFP again and give 10 days. And I think the Feds are looking at another increase. What's today? Yeah, it would be close to get it. I don't think we could get it
First week of
done.
May.
Yeah, exactly. So, they are our bank. They service us with all of our daily financials. And they've been good to us. And that could be another reason why maybe Claremont Savings and a couple of the other ones didn't, because they have sent them in the past, and Mascoma's always beaten their rates.
Yep.
So
So usually don't we get a schedule?
you do, they'll send a schedule. He mentions that, as we get the loan documents, we'll get the schedule.
So tonight, are we approving?
Yeah, you're gonna-
Signing the bond?
You're
or-
gonna approve financing with Mascoma Bank.
Yeah.
So that we can go to Renell and have her do all the documents, and we'll bring them back to the next meeting
To approve it, so we're
to
not,
sign.
so we're still not, so we get a schedule back that is out of whack, which I don't think it will be, but
Well, it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It's based on 2.55%.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be a little skosh larger than what we had looked at in January.
and are we doing the 1-year interest only or the 15-year?
Well, it's so the 1 year is if we want to, because, okay, so that dovetails into part of my report on updating you on the projects, right? So we are looking at embarking on the baseball project first because of the timing of the different schedules of like the football in the middle of the field, and right now the availability of subs, and the fact that inflation is so high on some of the different products. We've met with both of the committees and teams of coaches and Megan Sobel. And so we've decided to look at embarking and breaking ground on the track next spring, which is fine because it's still within the fiscal year that we're looking at. So we asked for that because we won't have to pay interest on anything we don't draw out. So the first year would be similar to a line of credit where we won't draw out what we don't need. We won't take the whole 1.8, in July, right? We'll only draw out the 350, whatever it ends up being, for the baseball field, and then leave the rest of it at the bank. So we'll only, when the first payment comes due next year in August, it will be lower because we will not have taken out the 1.5-ish million,
Yeah.
right? So it allows you to save money, and then they'll roll it into a regular note with regular payments.
Kelly had a question?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, okay, so Jamie, can you please remind me, have we accepted bids yet for these various projects, or is that the next step after we have the financing in place?
That's being worked on simultaneously.
Okay.
We've met with both of the, I guess you'll call it a committee, but I mean, it's me, Tony, Megan, and the coaches, and our athletic fields contractor who maintains them, right? Mr. Holmes. So, and our engineer. So we've all met. We've gone over both sets of the plans. We chose in discussion with Megan about looking at the sports time frames and also about what's going on in the marketplace with the different costs to do the baseball field first. So right now we're just waiting for the permits because that's in Vermont. So there's more permitting you have to deal with in Vermont. So we're waiting for the permits, Kelly, to go through. And then I hope to put out RFP on the baseball field probably within the next 2 weeks, depending on where the permits are at. Then we've asked the coach, you probably already know this, the track coach and Megan, to take a look at the track maps that we have and to discuss whether or not they want the same placement for the specials, meaning long jump, javelin, shot put, all those. Or does he want to see those being moved to accommodate, because now is the time that we could do that. So as soon as we should be meeting with that very soon, and simultaneously they'll be doing just some coring samples around the outside of the track, not to hurt it, to just look at the subsurface. And then we'll probably look to go out to RFP for the track. I'm gonna say probably around, it'll be fall.
Okay. My question My question was, I mean, just looking at the fact that these rates are, this rate, I guess, since we just have one proposal, is a little higher than we had expected. And knowing that costs of materials are, going up compared to when we initially budgeted for the warrant article. I know you work your magic, but are you still comfortable that we're going to be able to kind of accomplish all this with what we set out to? Yes.
Shaking her head, yes.
Barring any unforeseen changes in.
How could that ever happen, right?
I mean, I can't predict the future of what's gonna happen with oil prices. I'm hoping that's part of the reason that, in discussion with both of the teams, that's part of the reason why we decided to wait on the track until next spring. Because oil prices are so insane right now that we had no idea was going to happen when we had these discussions that will absolutely positively affect polyurethane pricing. So I think it's prudent for us to finance now, to lock in these rates, not draw right away to save us some money, and then go out to RFP in the fall for breaking ground as soon as possible on the different pieces. Even in the spring, like February or April, we could be doing some of the different work, and still probably allow for the track team, to do their part of their, most of their thing.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Jamie. So at this point, we're going to move on to business requiring action. So if you refresh your screen, Jay has updated the consent motion to only include B through I, and then J will be a separate vote. So this,
I think you're gonna want to pull I out as well too, because it's got a placeholder in it for the selected financer.
oh, okay.
Sorry.
So if you can pull I out.
Okay, I can do that.
So would someone like to make a consent motion for A through H?
Move to approve items B through H by consent.
Second. Sorry. Kelly, so Lily?
Carmen, yes.
Odell, yes.
Yes.
Keeney, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Barry, yes.
Nelson, yes.
Christie, yes.
Kelly?
McConnell, yes.
Okay. So moving on to item I. Oh, Johnson, yes. Just refreshing the screen. So. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the bond article financing? And the lender would be Mascoma. Neil.
Move to approve Mascoma Bank as the lender in the amount of $1,837,000 for rebuilding the Hanover High School track, along with the specialty areas in the middle grass field, and rebuilding the Dresden fields, Hanover High School baseball infield with appropriate drainage upgrades as necessary in conjunction with the Hanover High School athletics programming as presented.
Lisa. Lily.
Carmen, yes.
Odell, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Keeney, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Barry, yes.
Nelson, yes.
Christie, yes.
Kelly.
McConnell, yes.
Okay, moving on to J. Ben.
Move to approve the proposed changes to RMS structure and schedule resulting in an additional unbudgeted 0.8 FTE not to exceed $100,000 as presented.
Second. Lisa. Lily.
Carmen, yes.
Odell, yes.
Candid, yes.
Keeney, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Barry, yes.
Nelson, yes.
Christie, yes.
Kelly.
McConnell, yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to reports and communications. I don't really have anything to update other than we've got the retreat coming up. And that's about it. Oh, our May meeting, I will be out of the country. So Neil.
Yes. What do you need?
You're the vice.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when the planning agenda is. It's like May 11th, just to set up the May meeting. So
On this topic, I'll miss the retreat, sorry, but I will also miss I'm glad that your class day is going tonight, but it's going to the night of our SAU Dresden board meeting, so I will miss that as well.
Oh, wait,
And you will too. if
Wait a
you Want to
minute.
go to the class
yeah,
day at night,
I want to go to that.
So what night is it?
whenever the June meetings
So
are.
we can just move the June meeting.
Yeah, to not be
I
on
don't do
class
that
night.
just for the two of us who are not quorum.
No,
When is
but
the June
some of
meeting?
some of the awards are given out by board members. Yeah, so we'll
Yeah.
just,
Then you have two board members to give out the award.
oh, yeah. you guys-
Perfect. Traditionally given by the SAU chair, I think.
Yeah.
See you later.
So can we just make a note to move the June meeting? Okay. Thank you for bringing that up. Committee reports. I know we got a committee report. Okay.
According to the agenda, I'm going to update the board on strategic planning. I'm going to suggest that since it's an SAU function, that we wait till May 2nd for that.
We'll make
Yeah,
that a really long
A
meeting.
lot of the subcommittees just had their first meetings this week, which I figure is a forming type of meeting, so. Okay. Does anyone have any problems with delaying that until the SAU meeting? Superintendent's report.
All right, I just need to do my obligatory mention of the assurances for our title grants. So I've gone over this year after year for our new board members. There is a long list of federal regulations and federal statute that we have to sign off that we've acknowledged in all of our grant applications. They're attached for your review here. I'm not going to read through them all. One of the burdensome tasks the chair of each board has is to come in and initial every single page of these general assurances, front and back. And we do this each year. So you can read through those at your leisure, and we will submit this, and this will allow us to apply for all of our federal funding. That's the general assurances. The other thing that I want to just point out, we've attached to board docs with regard to the strategic plan, a timeline. And again, if you take a look at that, that'll let you know what's scheduled, what we've already accomplished, and give you an idea of the scope of the work that we're doing. And I want to publicly thank Ryan in my office for putting that together. It's extremely helpful, and it's a nice way to document our work together.
Yeah.
She's also working on drafting the work to date of the subcommittees, which we'll go into in more detail in a second.
So the color coding on this, the darker black, is that for you, for your schedule? The lighter grays are groups that you're not involved in? You see how it says systems and operation is a dark black, and then facilities is light gray?
That is right.
So
She's
that's
got
your
special
schedule.
color coding, so I know where I'm going and when I have to be there,
Got it.
which is not an easy task. Another thing I just want to quickly mention is if you've had a chance, I put out a public notice about this, but our website, if you've taken a look at the website, some really nice reorganization work that Karen Wright has accomplished. She's been working on it for quite some time. If you recall, she won a competitive grant from our website provider and was able to go through and do some really neat work. And in addition to Karen, Emma Cottage, who has recently left her position as volunteer coordinator and part-time photographer for us, did a ton of really good photography for that. And so I owe her a debt of thanks. Jess Eakin, who operates this facility, has also been super helpful ever since we got this particular platform for our website, along with folks in the other buildings. And I also want to welcome Teal Parker, who has now joined us as the volunteer coordinator, replacing Emma Cottage, and who also just happens to be a really top-notch photographer herself. So we're eager to start working with her as well. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Robin, would you like to give your report?
Robin would like you to know that last week we continued to see 0 to 2 cases per day across the district of COVID. And we're seeing a little bit of an uptake taking cases at Hanover High, but still in the single digits. And they don't seem to be connected. And we are continuing to monitor. So if things change, if anything becomes of great concern, we'll let you know. Robin wanted you to know that our staff has completed most of the release days that we have for curriculum work and preparing now for summer curriculum work. And we're really excited that the partnership and the collaboration between schools, for example, it's just been so nice to see. It's been a long time coming. And we're really excited about the work that folks are doing, especially the work that they're doing together. Robin also has been doing a lot of work on grants lately and had some time when everyone else was on break to really dig into a lot of that particular work. She's been getting feedback from schools and stakeholder teams to allocate funds so all the money is spent. Believe it or not, that's a problem for us sometimes, is that we have money allocated that we have a hard time figuring out where to spend it. There's such tight restrictions on it. And for most federal programs, there's a painful clause that says you can supplement but not supplant things that you're already working on. So that's sometimes challenging, but they have been able to work on some exciting summer programming, including academic programming at Hanover High for 9th grade transition, and to purchase technology to complement that you heard about in the public hearing tonight, to provide an electronic music lab here at Hanover High, and also to provide laser technology at RMS. And she's already working on the 22-23 grants, and that's again back to the general assurances that I just alluded to, and that's the assistant superintendent update. And I won't presume to give the business administrators update.
Hold on, Tim was asking me a question.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'll get to it.
I'm
if I
a nudge.
didn't. That's all right. You're good. I need to approve one of those positions. So I don't want to beat a dead horse. I think we went over the Dresden audit when it was in draft format. Okay. I'm not going to go over it again unless you really want me to. If you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. Okay. I will, however, you do have the governance letter in its final format with the management's responses that is kept in administrative content, because there are risk factors that can go along with that, and that's per the auditor's guidance. I will, however, address a couple of questions that came back about some of those things that I feel comfortable discussing in public that were sent to me by board member Kimberly Hartman, who's also our budget committee chair and Hanover Finance Committee representative. So there was a question about some delayed deposits, and she wondered if there was an appropriate and timely policy for cash or check donations specifically. We have been working through this, and I think we've probably given you an answer there, but I'm gonna reiterate it, and it probably won't match it exactly because I'm not reading from it. I'm reading from what the folks who were involved in that discussion sent to me. Deposits are done usually on Fridays. We do now have a deposit machine, which makes deposits much faster, so you don't have to actually leave the building in order for the money to go into the accounts. That has to do with check deposits. Cash deposits still have to go directly to the bank. And we're working on for donations, because usually they come in small amounts. We're working through with IT, with our IT director and our treasurer, on what kind of processing through the internet would be approvable and appropriate, that would not have too much risk associated with it. Okay, like Venmo's probably a no-go, okay? PayPal's probably not going to be widely used with the school district, but there are a few other ones, and we've been vetting those. And so, and our principals are asking us all the time, because of all the different groups and clubs that are trying to raise money and have an easy way for students who have a credit card or whatever to be able to pay for things quickly. So we're working through that. There was a disbursement, you know, when your auditors do random checking on all of the different pieces that they audit, they'll pull 10 or 20 out of a 6,000 randomly to be sure that they follow it through the whole entire process. And they noted that one of the disbursements from our middle school, they didn't feel had appropriate backup attached to it. My finance manager was out during portions of the audit follow-up. She has emailed me since and said that that should not have been a finding, and she's gonna send them another copy because she doesn't feel they got all the documents, because she looked it up again and feels that it was done properly. Okay, so, anyway, one of the other questions Kim had about student activity accounts rollover. This is already a policy that we have. The high school has been doing a better job inside of their own admin to follow up with folks as the classes are leaving or the clubs are closing, to retire that money and get it off of the books. So I think that's improved, and there's already a policy there. The other part has to do with the internet and security information, which I'm not going to share in general public because it creates more risk. But I will tell you that we've come a long way, and they're working on it every single day on making the changes that were discussed in the executive document. And then number 5, this is a very interesting one. One of the things that they mentioned, and they have mentioned, it's a repeat comment since I got here, and I don't understand why it was never written up prior to me coming here, because I've not changed anything. So it's interesting to me. Most of your school districts in the state of New Hampshire, when they draw up a budget to be voted on, it will have your main general fund budget, like you guys are used to seeing and everybody's used to seeing here, right? And then at the very bottom of that, it will also say additional funds or subsidiary funds, right? And those, the funds that they show at the bottom, and I'll send you one over the year so you can see what it looks like. But I don't want to freak everybody out, because we send out information, and then if the budget all of a sudden goes from here to like way up here, and it's because we had to include funds that are self-sustaining, which is what they're talking about. Food service funds, federal funds are usually rolled into the main budget article as subsidiary or additional funds. It's never been done that way here for as long as I can go back, okay, on documents, ever. I don't know why it was never written up before. It started getting written up like 3 years ago on Dresden. It's not considered a material finding. It's just something that, right, that they want to make us, no, it's a law in New Hampshire. They want to make us aware of, that they're saying that we're not following the RSA because we're not properly. So I spoke to the lead auditor this year, and I said, listen, could we address that by doing, and that's why this year when I did the presentation for the budget for Dresden, I showed that there were 2 other funds and what the funds would look like, that there's the fund for food service and that there's the fund, when we did our budget hearing, I showed those 2 other funds. And so that discussion that they're putting in the governance document should be in the Hanover document as well, because that is a New Hampshire school district as well. Vermont, not so much, they do it differently. So I think for next year, when we do our budget for the voting for the warrant, I asked, could we put the self-sustaining articles on their own warrant? Okay, so we would have a warrant article for food service funding, right? That will show, going to raise this much and we're going to have expenses of this much, and it should net to 0, right? And so for grants, we would do the same thing. So it would just mean that we would, because otherwise you would have to interject those or add them to the general fund article, and people are going to go, why did your general fund warrant article increase by from the prior year, 500,000, $500,000. And so I don't want to confuse people, so I've not done it, and I've told them that, and it's in the management's response.
And what do they say to that?
They're fine. There's no penalty for it. It doesn't put us at risk of anything. you know, we're transparent in all of our reporting when we do our quarterlies and our end of the year. So, you know, there's no penalty. But she said it sounds like a good idea if we didn't want to confuse the public.
So the other one, the not keeping a cash book, or our treasurer not keeping a cash book.
Yeah, and I have.
Why are we directing our treasurer to keep a cash book? Isn't
I
that-
have, and I've built it, and I've handed it to them, and I've asked them to do it, and I can't force them to do it. They
Who's our
are
treasurer?
Cheryl Lindbergh.
And she gets
She
elected.
doesn't work for me. She's an elected official.
So how do we, does the school board have any?
Nobody has purview. It's an elected position. I did write in my management's response that, I mean, she does come in every single week. She does look at all of the deposits. She does look through all of the checks before she signs them. I mean, she does all of the different pieces of all of the work. The only thing she's not keeping is a third, they call it the third leg of the stool, right? Is a separated cash book. I can't force somebody to do it. Let me tell you, the treasurer prior on Hanover never kept a subsidiary cash book here. They just didn't do it. And so, you know, my finance department, we keep a cash book, right? And we also keep the software as a cash book. So we have two legs of the stool because you have the bank and the bank statements, and then we have our own software system that has all of the safety mechanisms in place where, you know, the person signing the checks can't make deposits. I can't transfer money within the bank accounts. Okay, I have no access, right? So
We'll talk about this offline.
Yeah,
We'll
it's-
see if we can get to a resolution.
it's never, you know, it's a terrible answer, but it was never done here in a long time and never brought up, right?
A rule's a rule or a law's a law, so. Okay, anyone have any, do you have anything else here?
Yeah, well, so there's two more pieces here that don't have to do with the audit. Okay, so, sorry, I'm working it. You have the MS-22, which, thank you, you passed around and signed. This is a document that gets filed with the State of New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration that basically takes the document that we posted with the warrant, and it adds all of the warrant articles that were passed into the proper account lines, and then we file it with them, okay? It has been filed, we just needed the signature page, okay? Okay, that's that. And then I ran through, they're through April 30th, except for the food service, they're through March 31st. So I ran expenditure reports. And so as we knew, we did know this, so I know it's gonna feel like shock and horror, but it was discussed during when we built the budgets. That the Richmond Middle School got totally whaled by people changing their levels of health insurance elections and changing, we had so much turnover on new hires, and changing their election from Vermont retirement, which only costs us $1,500 a year, to New Hampshire retirement, which costs us 21% of their salary. Big difference. So you will see that right now, with the encumbrances that we're sitting on, we're projecting a negative position for end of fiscal year for Richmond Middle School's numbers. These, you know, those of you who have been with me a while, I'm very, I don't want to say conservative, thank you, when I do this, okay? So I will usually use worst case scenario, okay? Or the spending of the most funds that are available. Doesn't always come to fruition. On the flip side, the high school expenditures, I'm projecting to come in with a surplus of 584 or 31. Okay, so overall for expenditures, projecting a surplus of 322,028. I wish that was the best news because it's not, sorry. when you look at the unaudited surplus projection, we also knew that we were down in tuition payments. When we started the beginning of the fiscal year, we were off our tuition. We didn't have as many children as we had hoped would come. That's about 10 students. Plus or minus, because some of them are part-time because they attend the vocational. The other local revenue that we're off is interest. Interest rates are just killing everybody. We have adjusted that for the next year out. Although maybe by next year they'll be up, so we'll be good. I don't know. So projecting the variance for, for revenue. And when you net the two together, and then we have our fund balance retainage. So operational fund balance will be about 98,530 projected right now. Okay, I'll update that for you every single month through June. Because it will change, right? As things change. People quit, people leave, people come. And then the projected budget surplus offset that we've said we would give towards next year's budget as revenue was a $400,000 number. So right now, as it sits, we may be short of that by $40,000. Okay, as of today. This is a living, breathing document. We'll keep you posted. So it just would mean that we wouldn't have anything to retain, no fund balance. We possibly would have very small or no fund balance retainage. That's okay. We've done it before. We used to not do fund balance retainage. So, you know, we'll do what we can do when we get to that point in time. Also, you don't set tax rate until October. So in October, you can decide whether, you know, depending on the reimbursables coming in from the different states or the tuition that we're looking at, if that's going way up, then we can adjust some of those other numbers down and potentially, you know, put a different amount towards the tax rate and still maintain retainage. Okay, but we'll look at that when we get there after we know what the numbers are that we're dealing with. So I'm not worried at this point.
Yeah, Jane, what you said, made some kind of interest rates impact on this,
Because when we project income based on our deposits,
oh, okay,
our interest income.
so that should be going up.
Hopefully, yes,
Yeah.
but from what we had it budgeted, we hadn't brought it way down. And
Oh.
it didn't rebound after the COVID year,
Okay.
so it caught us short.
Sorry, when you said that, I thought there was some sort of variable interest rate.
Oh, no.
Or something here.
Cheers, credit
No.
Any other,
Sorry.
any other questions for Jamie?
Can you, sorry, just quickly, why is RMS so far?
Because of what we discussed in exhibit, I think it was 2A when we were building the budget. The healthcare elections from the new employees that were hired, as well as the folks coming in who didn't choose to do retirement with Vermont, but chose to do retirement with New Hampshire. And I have some of those numbers.
So those are built into next year's budget, though, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So remind me again, is that required by law that we give them those options, or is that required? It's required by law. It's not.
It's required by our interstate compact.
So anybody can choose either state, no matter where they live.
And to,
Correct.
Dresden.
In
and to
Dresden,
change that as an act of Congress.
yes. From what we're told.
Yeah, changing a compact requires.
Well, and here's the thing. I hesitate to ask to change it because I fear of what the change might be.
That
Because
would all have to be New
Dresden is a
Hampshire.
New Hampshire school district.
Yeah.
So the number we deal with could go up. Like 2/3 of our people are in Vermont, only 1/3 are in New Hampshire. I would hate for this, the outcome to be, you have to be in New Hampshire. That would scare me. I would run. It'd be a big number.
Okay. Any other
We
questions?
counsel people on how great it is in Vermont to be a part of their system. I know. Stop hiring New Hampshire fired teachers.
They're all coming from directly south of us.
Yeah, you need to hire past Vermont teachers because they participate. in
Draw from Burlington.
So, okay, so any other questions for Jamie?
That's it for me.
Thank you. So at this point, we're gonna move into non-public. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to enter into non-public session at 9:18 PM under RSA 91-A:3. Is that Roman numeral 2 personnel?
Lisa, second. Billy?
Carmen, yes.
Odell, yes?
Ken, yes.
Paul, yes.
Yes.
Johnson, yes.
Mary, yes. Nelson, yes.
Christie, yes?
Kelly?
McConnell, yes.
We'll need Julie in here.
Yep,
Julie?
Asked either Neil or I to FaceTime her, so.
I told her that
I'm all set. Neil sent me a link, and so Kelly and I will go to that link.
Yeah, I think they turn this off. See you over there.
Public for hopefully a few minutes and then back out to vote, and then we'll be ending the evening.
And I gave you the total.
During our non-public to discuss personnel matters, we did include a matter regarding a student. At this point, I'd like someone to move to approve the new hires for Hanover High School.
Do they need to be read individually
Just the titles
or just?
up at the top where it says recommended action, move to approve.
Uh-oh.
I can take it if you want.
Yeah, you do it.
Then
Move to approve hiring the following at Hanover High School: 1 science teacher, 3 learning specialists, 3 math teachers, 1 associate principal, and 1 principal.
second. Tony? Lou?
Tryman, yes.
Odell, yes.
Heaney, yes.
Johnson, yes.
There, yes.
Nelson, yes?
Christie, yes.
And Kelly is gone. She got dropped off of the call. Okay, moving on to RMS. Lily,
Move to approve hiring a French teacher and increasing FTEs for Spanish teacher at RMS as presented.
second. Lisa. Lily.
Tryman, yes.
Odell, yes.
Heaney, yes.
Johnson, yes.
There, yes.
Nelson, yes?
Christie, yes.
Thank you. Okay, agenda topics for next meeting. Neil will be running the meeting, but we'll have our planning session. I think it's May 11th. So if you have something you want to add, please let us know. Our next scheduled meeting is May 2nd for SAU, and then we have our retreat, and then our next Dresden meeting is May 24th. I'll
And
be-
we're talking about moving the June meeting for Dresden.
Yeah.
Yes, so we
moving the
need to
June
do that
meeting to Dresden.
sooner rather than later.
And I'll be thinking of you all as I'm sitting in Rome on May 4th visiting my son. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn at 9:57. Yeah.
Yes.
Heaney, yes.
Johnson, yes.
There, yes.
Nelson, yes?
Christie, yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank
That was a
you.
long one.
You got it under 10.
Yeah, under 10 though.
Under 10 there, Rick.
That agenda.
If Lisa hadn't gone over with the first one, you would have.
I know, I would have.
Killer.